Hi everybody, welcome to the Top 2 Inches of Sport podcast with me, Anthony Sheriff. This is a podcast about something that's always fascinated me, the mindset required to succeed in elite level sport. On this podcast, I'm going to talk to people who I really look up to in the world of sport and try to find out how they deal with the highs and lows that come with consistently striving for success in the unforgiving environment of elite sport.
For episode 32 of the podcast, I spoke to world champion boxer Natasha Jonas. Natasha is one of the most influential athletes in the UK and made history as the first female boxer to qualify for and represent Great Britain in an Olympic Games when she competed as a home athlete in London 2012. As well as being a world champion in the ring, Natasha also works as a boxing pundit on Sky Sports, where her knowledge of the game always shines through. In this episode, Natasha discusses the mindset that has helped her to become a trailblazer and achieve so much in an amazing career in the ring that's far from over yet. So here's episode 32 with world champion boxer Natasha Jonas. Okay, and we're recording. So thanks very much, Natasha, for coming onto the podcast. Basically, as I was explaining off camera, this podcast is going to be all about yourself, your life story really, and all about your career. But before we start talking about you, first of all, I just have to say a massive congratulations to your sister and your whole family, basically, because anyone that's listening that doesn't know, your sister was part of the English women's team that won the Euros there in Wembley on Sunday. So how mental has the last 48 hours been?
It's been a good one for the family, to be fair. You can tell, like, my voice is still a bit raspy from screaming. I went through so many. I probably went through more emotions for everyone than my own.
Yeah,
but I think that the best thing of it all was yesterday I did an interview for Sky, and you know the little thing that pops up saying who you are. It just said Natasha Jonas, Nikita's sister. We've got like a family chat. Put in a family chat. We've been laughing our heads off. Like, not Olympian, not a world champion.
You've been demoted from world champion.
How's that happened?
Yeah. What's your sister been doing for the last couple of days? Is she sober yet, or what are they actually doing today?
Yeah, I think a couple of them went on telly, didn't they, all with the sunglasses on, and they've celebrated like they should. They've worked hard, come a long way.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's one of the good things about the team sport is that like you can all come together and enjoy the moment.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well done to her. Anyway, it was an unbelievable achievement. So the first thing I'd just like to ask you, and this probably will involve your sister as well, could you just tell us a little bit about where you grew up and how you got involved in sport when you were young? I'm sure that involves your sister as well, because I think I'm right in saying you were a decent footballer yourself, were you?
Yeah, I was okay. I used to play for Liverpool ladies. Obviously, got a scholarship to America to go and play out there. But sport just started as like, I grew up in Toxteth in a house in Liverpool in my nan's. Yeah. I had a young mum. So we lived in my nan's house with a couple of my other cousins, and when there's 5 or 6 of kids running about the house, you're not allowed to just sit in the house. You have to go out and play, and we wasn't the richest family, so the first thing you get given is a flyaway ball, and we used to go make the best of that for hours and hours, and Kirby and like tournaments, whatever it was, whether it was one-on-one, whether it was team games, and we used to play till the lights went out, and that was it.
Yeah. Was football like your first sport, and did that come a long way before you started boxing?
Yeah, I like I say, I had 2 older boy cousins, and like football's a big, massive, probably the most dominant sport here, especially in Liverpool. So yeah, it was just a case of wherever they went, I had to go, and they had to take me. So whatever they went and just played footy, and as a young girl, you don't realize you're any different, and you just go and do the same. Yeah. And for a long time, I was the girl, so I was a little bit weaker than the boys, and I was probably the last one picked. But within that year, I became better than some of the lads and started being picked over my cousins, which didn't go down well.
Yeah, but you said then you got a scholarship to America as well. Again, am I right in saying that ended pretty badly? Did you get a bad injury to your knee, was it?
Yeah, it tore me cruciate ligament. And yeah, it was the end. We're talking, God, I don't like to say this, but we're talking 18 years ago now. So it was a long time, and it was a career-ending injury at that time, and the recovery was just too long. And I wasn't really great academically. I hadn't really gone there to get a degree. I'd gone there to be, a famous footballer. I'd gone there to be Mia Hamm, if I'm honest. I watched her in the World Cup before that, and she's the first woman to be sponsored £1 million deal from Nike. And I watched that World Cup and I thought, oh my God, I'm well better than her. I just need to get to America. So that's what I went with, the intentions of becoming Mia Hamm. So it didn't quite work out.
But when that didn't work out, though, when you got a career and an injury like that young as well, if you're thinking you're going to be the next big thing in football, like you're probably attached a lot of your identity to your footballing ability. When you got that injury, mentally, did that have a big effect on you? Did you lose that sort of that identity that you had?
Everything. I just like I said, I'd like built myself up. That I was determined I was going to be a footballer. That's the only goal I had, and everything that I'd done in the build up to that. Like, I didn't really get very good marks in school, but then I knew that I needed to get to an American university because that's where the big leagues were. So then I like booked up my ideas in school and actually got better and actually got the certificates and the accreditation that I needed to go. So sport was my motivation to do anything. And when I couldn't do it anymore, I felt like my whole world was crumbling before me, because it was my drive to do anything, and it was my motivation to do anything, and I'd never seen myself as being anything but within sport in some field. So it was hard. It was hard to accept. It was hard to take. And there was other things going on outside of just in my life in general that just wasn't great, and it felt like it was all coming crashing down. It probably, as an adult now, looking back, I probably realised that I might have been a little bit depressed.
When athletes get injured and they have to give up sport, you can often hear about them maybe comparing themselves to others, maybe looking at how people they played with on the rise, how they're getting on well. Like, did you find yourself, and obviously not even just people that you were playing with, Liverpool is such a sporting city, like so many great athletes from there. Are you looking at other people from areas around you maybe excelling in sport, and like did you get like that where you're almost comparing yourself to others and that just almost makes you feel worse, basically?
100%. So like the time that I'm talking about, I think Beth Tweddle had like won her first Commonwealth gold, and she was like 15, 16. Wayne Rooney had just signed his first contract with Everton and he was 16. Kat Johnson-Thompson had broken all the schoolgirl records and was always in the papers. And I was like 20, and I was thinking, these are all like babies. So if I was going to be a sports person, I'd already be it now. That was the first time ever in my life that like I was like, right, I'm going to get a job and I'll just be normal like everybody else and do what everyone else does. And it was the worst year ever.
Well, like obviously you like the sporting route you went down. Then obviously, I think were you the first female to box for GB in the Olympics? I think I'm right in saying that.
First to qualify, first to win.
Yeah. So again, you're not like you didn't really follow anyone's path. So you're comparing yourself there to Beth Tweddle, Wayne Rooney. Was there ever a point where you had to make a conscious decision to maybe just stop comparing yourself to others? Because obviously comparing yourself to other people isn't good in any form of life, but especially with a sporting career that's so short, you're probably trying to play catch up. Was there ever a point where you consciously stopped comparing yourself because what you went on to do wasn't really something you could compare to anyone else? Like you were a trailblazer, really?
I don't think like, I think that comes with maturity to stop comparing. Then you start just comparing yourself to yourself. But that takes a long time. I think when I got into boxing, I was just going in with the idea that it was just something I was going to try because someone had bugged me to do it and do the female only session. And I didn't have any aspirations of going anywhere or doing anything. And that's probably what kept me in the game so long, because every time I've got to a new height, like I thought, right, when Rotunda asked me to box for them, I thought, right, this is boss. I'm on a club show, I've got a top that says Rotunda, and I was made up. And then he was like, well, we can put you in the championships. So I went and won the championships, and I was like, oh wow, just I'm champion of England.
Sorry, is that the national championships?
That's the national championships, yeah, called the ABAs. So then after I'd won the ABAs, I thought, like, I didn't know about boxing, like it was brand new to me. So then then they were like, well, actually, you're the English champion, you need to start going to tournaments for us and, duels. And I was like, okay, so now I've got a top that says England with Jonas on the back. I'm like, yeah, this is boss this. And then we were going all around the place, and we weren't the greatest team at the start, but then we got the nod to be in the Olympics, and they were like, well, now we need a team GB. And I was like, okay, well, and they'd be like, well, you're one of the champions, you need to go for the assessments. And I got on as one of them. So every time that I thought I'd reached as high as I could go, there was another goal or another another door that opened that made me want to stay and progress. So what you're right in what you're saying is that I didn't have anybody else to compare to.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say I'd done that consciously.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and at what stage, and you were saying like you kept progressing and kept realizing how good you are. At what stage would you say you realized, oh, like I'm very good at this, like I can actually be, this can be what I am. I am the boxer.
I think the minute that I started believing in myself, and this is going to be mad because it wasn't actually that long ago, was we did a multi-nations camp in Brazil before the 2012 Olympics, so it was just the end of 2011.
Okay.
And I think it was the Santos who'd won the world bronze medal. She was in the competition. She was in the duel that we had, and I beat the Santos, and that was when I thought, you know what, I always kind of knew I was like, I knew I was top 8, maybe. I definitely top 10, but I knew I was top 8. But then I just beat the world number 3, and I was thinking, wow, I'm actually better than I give myself credit for. Yeah. And then when I got back, we went to a tournament. What was it? The test event, the Olympic test event. So every Olympic sport has an event where they trial it to see if their event's going to work.
Yeah.
And Dong was in that. Dong Cheng was in that, and she was she'd been beaten by Katie in the World Championships the year before. So she was the world silver medalist, and I won that. I won.
Yeah.
So I was already on my way to the qualifiers, beat the world number 1 and the world number 2.
Yeah.
So I was like, by the time qualifiers came, I was like, wait, I can qualify here. Like that was the first time I realized that I was very confident in myself.
Yeah, like it's mad that it took that long, because you mentioned a couple of minutes ago as well the Rotunda. So again, anyone listening that isn't aware of Liverpool, Rotunda, it's an amateur gym in Liverpool, but I mean, it's produced yourself, who's a world champion. It's Tony Bellew's gym, amateur gym, isn't it? Who's also a world champion. All 4 Smiths brothers, so I think 2 of which have won world titles. I mean, that, in my opinion, that can't really be a coincidence that there's so many top boxers that have went on to compete at a high level in the amateurs for Team GB, but also to have achieved so much and become world champions in the pros. Like, is that a coincidence? Because I don't think it can be. Or is there something about the culture of the Rotunda gym that just basically breeds champions?
No, I think it's a mix of everything. I think when you see someone being successful from your gym, like I've trained alongside them for a very long time now, but they've been kids when I've been in the gym, and watching them like Paul and Stephen go off and be on GB, and I've sparred with them, and I was thinking, well, I've sparred with them, like I can see where it goes. Yeah. If you work hard and you put your all in, so you can see the pathway that it can lead you to.
Yeah.
But then the actual gym itself, it's like another big family. Like, I honestly thought I'd go there and feel out of place, and I was the only female at the time in the gym, and it was quite daunting to even go into the gym. It was on the other side of the city and stuff, and it was just, as soon as I went in there, like, I was made to feel like one of them. Like I wasn't made to feel any different. I had to do everything that they did, and when I say they, I mean like the lads did, and I didn't get away with anything just because I was a female, and I think they actually brought me on. So yeah, it's like a good mixture of everything. The best thing probably was, like I say, just made to be feel like a boxer and not the female boxer, and treat me different. I was just, right, the lads are doing 10, you're doing 10, I might be a little bit slower and get screamed at, but I was doing it anyway, regardless.
Yeah, but it's not just that gym. There's something about Liverpool, I think, as a city. So I actually went to university in John Moore. So I lived in Liverpool for 3-4 years. And just for fitness, I mean, I'm not a boxer, but just for fitness, I used to do a bit of training with the university team, and that was in the Solly. And that was like, David, you go in and there's like pictures of, like, I'm a boxing fan, and you're looking at pictures of David Price, Derry Matthews, people like this, and you're just thinking, Jesus, this probably isn't even the top gym in Liverpool. Like, you've got all them champions in the Rotunda. What do you think it is about Liverpool? Because again, I don't think that can be a coincidence. You look at all the other cities in England, they don't breed as much champions as Liverpool seem to. And maybe London might, because obviously it's so big, but for a small city, the amount of champions in that city is unbelievable. Is there something about that city that, again, just breeds champions?
I think I always like to say we're a fighting town, and we always fight for what we believe in, and we feel like we're fighting against the world sometimes.
Yeah,
so I think it's bred in here, and I know for myself, like, I was always fighting for the biggest dinners. So you'd think naturally that boxing would be my sport, but I just think you know there's a culture here of you're not just allowed to sit around.
Yeah.
Like, you've got to be doing something, and be doing something productive or positive, and parents encourage it. Some parents would be like, "Oh, I don't want them to fight," but like, you see it as a bit of a structure, and the coaches in the gym are a lot more than coaches.
Yeah. When you got on the Team GB setup, then did you pretty much have to leave the Rotunda and move to? Is it Sheffield that the Institute of Sport is? Yeah.
Yeah, so you sign up for 4 years. You sign up for an Olympic cycle, and it's Monday to Thursday, sometimes Monday to Friday.
Okay.
And you're probably away maybe for a week or a month, competing in tournaments.
Yeah.
Because that you're funded to go to. So it is a big step up, and it's a big commitment. And as one of the starting years, it was very, very hard.
Yeah.
But you just, like everything, you just adapt and you get used to it.
Yeah. So when you move into the Team GB setup, then, in terms of sports psychology, was there much sports psychologists on camp? Because I'm sure all those athletes are looked after to the absolute maximum. So, like, did you get introduced to sports psychology at any stage then?
Yeah, we did. You get access to a lot of things through the EIS, to be honest. Obviously, you've got the best coaches in the world.
Yeah.
You get sports psychologists, you get doctors, anatomy and physiologists, data analysts, nutritionalists, everything that you've kind of floated and skated by, going off your coach's knowledge, what you read up yourself, and you get that all. You get people who are specialised in that, strength and conditioning coaches, everything.
And did you work with a sports psychologist, or what was your first introduction to them? Was it more of a workshop where all of the athletes were there, or did you ever have one-to-one sessions?
Yeah, there was they were quite big on the dynamics of you on GB, and a lot of it was tried to be specialised and tailored to you, but didn't always work out like that. Some sessions were like general sessions, but others, if you had a problem, like, I wouldn't say I had a problem with weight, but I was sometimes coming over. We was only allowed to be 5% above our boxing weight. So I was 60 kilos. You was allowed to come in at 63 kilos. So sometimes I was coming in a bit heavy, and the thingy. So I worked with the psychologist then. This was my first big thing. We'd done a lot of things with him, but this was like what was tailored for me. And we went through what is it, your mindset of why you eat. And I was just like, I just get this like greedy kid syndrome. So we called that, like, that kid, greedy kid. And he was like, oh, when you're on it, what is it? And I was like, I just feel like this, and we called this personality something else. So we realized I've got two personalities. Like, why is it that when greedy kid goes home that he's eating and stuff, or she's eating? And I was like, well, what it is my bedroom. When I was living in my nan's, is the 3rd floor. So I stay downstairs, and I do a route of going into the kitchen. If I go into the kitchen, then I go into the back room, which is where the fridge is and stuff. And that's the cycle. I go from the living room to the kitchen to the back room, and I can't come back without having something. Even if it's a drink, I come back with something. And he was like, "Oh, why do you sit downstairs?" I said, "Because that's where the sky is. We only had sky in the one room." And he said, well, why don't you do it when you're upstairs? I can't be bothered walking down for these flights of stairs to get it. And he was like, well, there's your problem. So I went and got Sky in my room, and that solved the problem.
Problem solved, yeah.
Problem solved, yeah. Sky. Who knew Sky would say?
Yeah, no, yeah. And you obviously then you went on to the Olympics in London 2012, and I'd be interested to know if you're working with psychologists in the build up to that, because like so few athletes obviously become Olympians, but then so few less than that again are Olympians for a home Olympics. So like as amazing as that is, like the emotion and everything that goes with it, was it, I often wonder, do home Olympians sometimes almost wish it wasn't at home? Like, did you feel extra pressure going into London 2012, or was it just amazing the fact that it was at home? Did you view it as a positive?
Yeah, so for me, I viewed it as a positive, and I was so happy to be there. Like I said, I think I had a little bit of imposter syndrome where you think, I was like having breakfast with like Chris Hoy, and like I see your name, Usain Bolt, and then in the opening ceremony, loads of people were taking pictures of me, and I was like, wow, must be because I'm like the home athlete.
Yeah.
And then when I turned around and looked, there was Kobe Bryant and LeBron James standing behind me, because like we came in last, but United States are one of the last countries, so everyone was taking pictures of them. But so like, and I'm standing with them, and I was thinking, wow, this is like unreal. So for me, it was really good. But I know for people like Savannah, I remember doing an interview for me, the media, when they came to the EIS, when we'd all qualified. And she was like, you're the world champion, there's a lot of expectation at the home Olympics. Do you feel any pressure? And she was like, yeah, I wish it wasn't here. And I was just like, I knew that was not the answer they wanted. So me and Nikki were like, what she means was there's a lot of pressure. We tried to like button it up. But for people like her, it was detrimental for her. She like, for us to be away and to, but because we don't have tournaments here in Britain. We don't have like, I think the last time we'd had something was 2007. I think we had the EUs. Okay. So we don't have any big competitions. So to have the Olympics was just madness.
Yeah. No, speaking of madness,
everywhere we go in the world, obviously the whole world hates England. So wherever we go, wherever it is, we always got food. And then, you're coming out in the Olympics, and out of the 10,000 people that are sitting in the XL, a good 95% of them, unless you're boxing Katie Taylor, was for you. Yeah. So it was a nice experience for me. And you're so but like focused on results that I feel, and I said this to the people that went this time, I was like, some of the 2020 athletes, I was like, look, when you get there, enjoy the moment, because no sooner is it gone. And like, I feel like when you're an athlete, you're so results driven that you forget to enjoy the moment. And now I only enjoy the moment when I look back. Yeah. But at the time, I didn't like appreciate it and soak it in and absorb it. Like I feel I should have now. I wish I had.
Well, speaking of moments, you mentioned your fight with Katie Taylor there. So from an Irish perspective, I mean, that Olympics was absolutely massive. It was like a generational moment when she boxed in the Olympics. We were all tuning in, like everyone, people that didn't even watch boxing were all tuning in to watch Katie Taylor. And I'm sure like it was massive in Liverpool for you and massive in the UK. Everyone's tuning in for you as well. Were you aware of almost how iconic that moment was? Because that's still on television in Ireland now. Katie in the 2012 Olympics. It was just absolutely massive. And I think I'm right in actually saying, I think it broke some record, didn't it, for like the loudest event ever?
I didn't come out with an Olympic medal, but it came out with an Olympic record, which is so weird.
What is that? Was it the loudest Olympic event ever?
Crowd participation noise, yeah. So it was louder than a jet engine or something. So they tell me.
Yeah, but going into that event, are you aware of how iconic that is? Not just in England, but in Ireland as well. Are you almost aware that you're involved in history here, or going into an event, you just have to be just tunnel vision just on your performance?
No, I was just focused on the results. Like I said, we before the Olympics and after we'd qualified and we knew who was going to be there, we identified who, for everyone, not just for me, but who was are the biggest threats to you getting a medal. Yeah. I think I'd identified Sophia Ochegava, obviously Katie. Who else was there? I think the Santos, Dong Cheng. and they was the main ones, I think, that I identified. And obviously I got the look of the draw and pulled the worst one.
Yeah. How did you deal with that loss then to Katie?
See, that's the thing about boxing that nobody sees. So in the third round, obviously we were doing 4-2s in the Olympics. In the third round, I think I can't even remember how many points down I was. And I was sitting in the stool and my coaches are shouting instructions to me, but I'm not even listening. In my head, I'm just like having like a devil and an angel moment. And I was saying to myself, right, I'm losing by, like, say it was 6-7 points, whatever it was. I can be happy that I'm only losing 6 or 7 points to Katie and just skate around the ring and let it be 6 and 7. Or I can go for it and whatever happens. So then I did the clap with Umpty and I had 10 seconds and like I was listening then to what the coaches are saying, it's come back, and as soon as I stood up I was like, right, I'm going for it. And I just went for it. So I think now, like afterwards, even though I literally cried for about 2 days straight. I phoned my mum at like 5 o'clock in the morning the next day because she was in London at the time, and I was like, Mum, where are you? I need to get out of this village. Like, I can't stop crying. And she was like, oh, we're in this hotel. Do you want me to come and get you? You know? And I was like, no, I'll come to you. I just need a minute. And she was like, okay. So I went out the village and went to my mum. But I think the saving grace for me was that I went for it. I didn't just skate around. So I knew there was literally nothing else I could give. Like at the end, I'd given everything. So it didn't really matter about the result. Obviously, I wanted to win, but it didn't matter about the result that I lost because I'd given everything anyway. So I could live with that.
Yeah, you've had I'm just going to skip forward a bit now, but I will come back to the Olympics in a moment. But you've had a couple of losses in the professional game as well. Now they have been contentious. A lot of people thought that you've won them. You know, they've been very close decision losses. In the pro game, is it harder to deal with a defeat, or is it easier?
It's harder because you kind of building yourself up on the ladder as a pro.
Yeah.
And then if you lose, you get put back to the bottom of the ladder.
Snakes and ladders, isn't it?
Oh, it's so bad. And like there's very, very, very few professional boxers that come out with an unblemished record. Very few.
Yeah.
And you know, some of the greatest in the whole game have lost. Pacquiao, you know, Canelo, Ali, whoever you want to say, they've all, Lemachenko, they've all lost. But there's like this thing about protecting your own, and it becomes a bit of a burden. So once it was gone, I don't want to say because I wasn't happy that it went, but it had gone. So there was nothing else to protect. It didn't matter anymore. That wasn't the thing to protect. I needed to get myself back on track. So I think it's harder in the pros because, and especially on GB, like I said, you're away once a month going to a tournament. There's another tournament to go to. So it's just like, right, that was rubbish. That I'm going to go next month. Like next month, I know what I need to do. And like the next month you'll go, the next month you'll go. So you could pick yourself. You had to pick yourself up pretty quick in the amateurs because if you dwelled on it for too long, then you'd soon be off the squad because there's 4 other people trying to take your place. So it's just a conveyor. So you've got to pick yourself up and get yourself back ready. Whereas the pros, you've got a lot longer to dwell from. There's a lot longer between fights. There's, like I say, that whole like building yourself up and then you just get knocked down. So it is harder, I think, as a pro to come back from.
Yeah. So I'll come back to the pro game now in a few moments, but just to go back to London 2012, where was your relationship with boxing at the end of London 2012? Like, because you decided to stay for another cycle, didn't you? Another Olympic cycle.
Yeah, I was still. I genuinely believed that the only person in that tournament that could have beat me was Katie, and she did. Like, it was just unfortunate that it drew her. So I wanted to stay to prove to myself that I was good enough to win a medal, and I knew I was good enough to win a medal.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but what happened then? Because I think you went to the Commonwealth. Was it 2 years later, and you ended up getting injured? So, like, where was your relationship with boxing then?
So after the Commonwealth, I snapped ligaments in my toe. I just did a freak. Like it was me versus Shelley Watson. we like fell funny, and I fell back on my leg, but my toe was still like out, and I heard it just go boink, like literally like boink, like a snapped elastic band. And I was like, I stood up and I was like, I literally couldn't move my foot, and they were shouting move, because I've always been quite good with footwork, so that was one of my like best assets. So people were like, move your feet, and I just couldn't do it. Like it was just like trailing behind. And after that, I ended up losing. And then after that, I had to have, there was a choice of having an operation or leaving it. Now, if I left it, it could potentially damage me, like later in life. It could come back and like kind of haunt you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or I could have the operation, but the operation meant that I'd missed the qualifiers for Rio.
Yeah.
And in the like weighing up thing, I was thinking like, boxing is a short career, I'm going to leave my toe forever.
Yeah.
So I decided to get the operation, which meant that I would miss the qualification for Rio. And I knew I never intended on staying. I never intended to still be boxing, because there was no pro scene at that time. So I never intended to be boxing for 2020. So I knew that I wasn't going to stay till 2020. So I was kind of like, well, what's the point? It's like, what's the point?
And I know you became a mother then, didn't you? So you had a little girl around that time. So in your head then, when you became a mother, that's not just, I'm taking a break now, I'm going to have a child and go back to boxing. Are you in your head walking away from boxing at that stage?
When I said goodbye to the amateurs, I was saying goodbye to boxing, because like I said, there was no pro scene at that time. So that was the hardest decision to me, because like you said earlier, like everything that I'd done up until then, from 2005 when I started till 2014, I'd always been a boxer. I'd always been attached to the boxer. And then I was saying goodbye to it all, and I wasn't going to be that person no more. So that was the hardest decision to me.
How did becoming a professional come about then?
Sky got me on to do the commentary for Katie's debut, because of obviously all our rivalry and stuff. And I'd done the thingy, and Tom Stalker, who was our team captain for GB Boxing, he was a professional at the time. And he phoned me up after and said, I've just seen you on Sky, like, you're brilliant. She was like, Katie was brilliant. She was like, I think this will open a lot of doors for women now. Wouldn't you think of coming back? Now, at the time, like, being a new mum and a first-time mum, you're just so, I've gone from being results-driven to just trying to be a perfect human for this little human that I'm now responsible for. And everything was like, all the focus was shifted to try and like do the best that I could do in that sense. And when he said that, I was like, I still trained, because I'll always train. That's just who I am. But being fit and being boxing fit are two different things. And I was like, shut up, Tom. Like, shut up. I'm like 2 stone overweight and whatever. And I was like, shut up, Tom. And then I put the phone down. We laughed about it, put the phone down. And I was thinking to myself, like, what is stopping me? Like, the baby's in nursery now, and I had a self-employed job at the time where I could work my way around training. So I was like, So I phoned my mum and my cousin, because they're the 2 people that I'm probably closest to, and they see like this at the other side of boxing, where I'm crying for 2 days and stuff, and don't want to be out of bed because I've lost and stuff. So phoned them. I was like, Mum, what do you reckon about going pro? And she was like, you never have to worry about the baby. Like, don't worry, if you have to put your whole heart in it. If you think you can do it, we're 100% behind you. I was like, okay, thanks. Put the phone down, phoned my cousin. And my cousin was like, well, like, the baby's not an issue, but can you put yourself back through all this, and are you willing to do it? And are you going to give it 100%? You can't be flirting in between both. And I was like, yeah, I will. She was like, well, then what's your problem? Go and do it then. We're 100% behind you. So I was like, phone Tom back up. I was like, Tom, what do you need to do? And he was like, you told me. And then obviously the rest is history.
How would you say becoming a mother changed your perspective and your outlook on boxing? Because I'm sure boxing, when before you were a mother, was obviously very important, but now it's now not the most important thing in your life. And that's not to say that it wasn't still vitally important. Maybe you had a different motivation where you were more driven to win. But how would you say your perspective changed? Did you look at boxing through a different lens now that you had a child?
100%. Like, so when I was on GB, like I said, it was all about results. And like, I'd be like, oh, I can't believe I lost in that tournament. Like, I can't wait to get back to the next one. And it annoyed me. And like, I was selfish in the sense of what you have to be. Like, that's who you are as an athlete. Now, as a mum, as soon as I walk through the door to go in the house or I pick her up from the school gate, like, we don't need selfish Tash anymore. I have to be in mum mode. So like, I can now differentiate between being the athlete that I need to be in the gym and then being the person that she needs me to be at home. And I think that gives me mentally a break from, because to be that, that selfish and driven and, not caring about what anyone else is doing and sacrificing things all the time, it takes a toll sometimes. Like, like you ask anyone who's an athlete and they'll say it's 90% mental. Like physical stuff, you can do anything. Your body can do anything it wants you want it to do. Literally, someone said, right, you've got to fight at bantamweight. I would probably make it. You know what I mean? But my mind's got to be with me, and that's the hard thing sometimes, is always keeping your mind focused and keeping it on. But now I feel like I have that mental break to be able to be like, okay, I'm not here now. I can just switch off and be like, right, I don't need her right now. I need to be mum. And to be honest, she doesn't care about athlete Tasha or Miss GB. She cares about mum.
Does she know though that her mother is a world champion boxer?
So she's not interested one bit in what I do, but anything that Nikita does, she absolutely idolizes Nikita. And I shouted at her for being naughty the other day, and she was like, "That's not very Miss GB of you." I was like, "What's that mean?" And she went, "That's you're not acting like Miss GB." I was like, "Why? What's Miss GB?" She went, "Nice."
Giving you smack talk, and she's only what age is she?
Oh yeah, she gives like, I might be a world champion and got whatever accolades, but she's the boss of the house. She's the champion of the house.
So boxing is, I always think it's a bit weird, isn't it? In the sense that it's the opposite of a lot of sports, in football or rugby, whatever it may be. Once you turn pro, you're sort of looked after. Whereas if you've gone from Team GB, you've had everything provided for you. You've your top coach and your dietitian, strength and condition, sports psychologist, like you mentioned earlier. But when you turn pro and you leave that GB setup, am I right in saying you're sort of just like let loose by yourself, and it's up to you to source strength and conditioning coaches, an actual boxing coach, and like if you want a sports psychologist, but you pretty much have to start from scratch, don't you?
Yeah, you're like, I remember the first time I said to Joe, I think my hand's a bit sore. He was like, yeah, you go see the doctor. I was like, oh right. So yeah, you are. You like it's almost a little bit harder if you have come from the GB setters, because you are like,
imagine,
I suppose the way like we say like the footy players are like sheltered and they lead a sheltered life. When you've had all that, being looked after, and then you let loose on your own, it's hard. And it's the same way from GB, because you are like pampered and babied, and like everything is there and given on a plate for you.
Yeah.
And everyone's there to make you better.
Yeah.
And then when you go pro, you're your own person, so you've got to do it all yourself.
So the coach you ended up working with is Joe Gallagher, who you've worked with him for your whole career, I think, for your whole pro career. So like any boxing fan listening to this will know who Joe Gallagher is. I've never met him, obviously. I've only seen him on interviews and things like that, but I really like him. And one thing that I love about him is that he seems to be really, really emotionally invested in all of his fighters. Now, I'm sure all top coaches are, but there's something about seeing him, how he comes across in interviews, where you can tell how much he cares. So I could be totally wrong in saying this, but I've always just kind of got the feeling that he's not just like a boxing coach in terms of the technical and tactical side of it. That I've always, like, he kind of gives me that vibe of almost like a teacher as well as just a coach. Like, would he talk to you about not just the physical, technical, tactical side of it, but would he talk to you a bit about the mental side of it, whether that be a pressure on fight night or whatever it may be?
Yeah, and I think all the top coaches are,
Yeah.
and would do that. Like, you see the relationship Mike Tyson had with his, and you know, like well, there's a lot of father sons, but there is a it's more, it is more than just being physically
Mhm.
well or physically at your peak. Your brain has to be with you, your mind has to be with you. They all have to be in sync. And um, in the lockdown, me and Joe, and this is when I was on course to fight Terry, and then obviously lockdown happened and it was off, and then but after the Vivian Open off thing, I kind of came away with it. Like, I can't leave boxing like that. After everything that I've done to get myself back where I was, I couldn't leave it like that. And I was like, me and Joe had gone through, like, there was the playbook, there was Relentless, the book, not the Eddie Hearn one, the other one, the Tim Grover, and he's got another book that we went through, and we literally, whether it was a box set, whether it was a book, whether it was a podcast, we were swapping and using all different types of things. To, like, he'd watch one and he'd say, watch this, and I'd read one and say, read that. So we swapped information constantly, and it was all about mindset, because, like I say, it's the strongest and most powerful tool that we have.
Yeah, I always got that vibe from him. I didn't know if that was the case, but he just really comes across like that in his interviews. It sounds like he very much works on the mental side of things with you then. So have you ever, as a professional, worked with a sports psychologist, or have you seen them in and around with other fighters in the pro game?
Yeah, no, I appreciate how and maybe because it is because I've had good and bad times and been through things and whatever, that I do appreciate the work that they do. And I love psychology anyway. But yeah, I've worked with two sports psychologists, and I've worked with some spiritual people as well, because I think, like, being the whole package and well-being, I think that's important as well, on a more spiritual side of not just being healthy mind, healthy body, but being having a healthy soul, and being a positive soul.
Yeah, I've heard that you've got into meditation and yoga. Is that quite a recent thing?
No, I did yoga throughout the time I was on GB, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
It's just always I like flitting in and out of it. I'm not like a yogi, as they call
Yeah.
themselves. I'm not one of them, and it's simply because, like, I don't know. I'm making excuses now, but I'm just not. I flitter in and out of it. But when you see yourself progression, and it's brilliant when you're in the flow of it.
Yeah.
But I just can't always keep it up, which is tough. But yeah, no, I've always done yoga. That's not something that's new.
What about the meditation? Is that something that's quite new?
Meditation is something that's quite new, and I've actually got my little girl doing it as well.
Really,
And
yeah.
that's probably more accredited to the more spiritual side of the work that I've been doing. And yeah, she enjoys it. It's hard to keep a little 6-year-old still for more than 2 minutes, especially my little one. But she that we got, like, quite a fun one, and it was only offline, and that's saying just stuff. But no, she enjoys it, and, like, we talk about things, and I think it's good to have that.
Like, I can see how yoga would definitely help any athlete, really, just in terms of flexibility. But has meditation helped you in any way as a boxer, or could meditation help a fighter?
Yeah, well, I mean, everyone's going to take up from it what they want. Not, like I said, people don't want to sit still. So people minds are too busy. Too busy, and it's hard for people to flush for everything else and filter things out that you need. But I think, for me, like, you spend so much time worrying about what's coming or what's been, that sometimes you forget about the here and the right now. And I like, even if it's just 1 hour, 20 minutes, 40 minutes, whatever the session is, just living for, like, everything that I see it as it is, and being present, I suppose. So I think that's important.
Yeah. Well,
and I've learned even tactics to bring myself back to the present if you're in the ring and you're frustrated. So, like, it's things like that as well, that, like, it's not just about humming and lying and being still and breathing, and it's not things like that. It's, when you're in boxing, you've got to be in control when you're out of control, and sometimes it's hard to do that when you're frustrated and things aren't going your way, and the tactics that you thought were going to work on. So to bring yourself back to the present and to make your mind focus on what's actually happening and the stimulus that you're getting right then and there in that present, that can only be beneficial, surely.
What kind of little tactics have you worked on to bring you back to the present moment when you're in a fight?
That'd be telling. Yeah, that'd be telling. It's just little things, to be honest. Like I know there's certain telltale signs of when I'm frustrated, and I know what they are, and I recognize them. That's the main thing, is being able to recognize when you are. Because I asked one of the lads the other day, and he didn't have a clue. So being able to recognize that you're off. Yeah. So and then there's just like the senses that you have, touching yourself, whatever it is. I'm not saying there's anything for you to snip, but whether there's something you can look at, just bringing it up back to the present and then focusing on little things. But one of the big things is just recognizing it.
So you're talking about thinking too much into the future as well. What would you say your relationship is with fear and anxiety in the lead up to a fight, particularly I would imagine on fight week and fight day in particular?
So I would consider myself quite a laid back person. Like I don't really get over anxious. And a lot of people that I've shared a room with over the years will tell you that I am really laid back. I remember being with Lisa Whiteside, and she's the total opposite, but we work well because she's so up there and I'm so down there. So we actually worked well together. But there is a but. Like sometimes, not even sometimes, every time that I'm warming up or I'm getting ready to go in, I think, why do you do this? Like, what are you doing to yourself? Why? Like, why are we here again? We said this was going to be the last time. Like, and I do have them thoughts. And then literally, as soon as I hear the music, or as soon as they say, right, Tash, it's you're going on next, and I'm doing and I think this is why I'm addicted to the high of that. That's why, like, and again, my mindset changes, because like you go from being a little bit worried and a little bit to, no, I'm ready. This is what I do it for. This is why I do it. And you get in, and I question myself all the time. That's not new. But there's that switch that thinks, right, this is it. That's why.
A few boxers and fighters in general that I've spoken in the past, they talk about fear, but like it's never necessarily a fear of getting hurt. They kind of sign up for that, I suppose. They're used to getting punched. But a lot of them I've noticed have said about there's quite often a bit of a fear of it gassing out pretty much in the middle of a fight. That's something that can keep them up at nights, that they won't have the engine to do the full fight. And obviously that can then have a negative spiral, and it can result in a bit of anxiety training where they can end up nearly overtraining or overcooked then on fight night. Has that ever been anything that you've suffered with yourself?
No, but I think one of the reasons for that is because I've always been around people who are very experienced. Like I remember Stephen Smith. Like I remember when I first got onto GB, and I'd literally been there about 3 weeks, and I went in on a Monday, and I'd done my Monday session, and I went to, we always used to like just go to the sauna and chill afterwards, and I was sitting in the sauna, just sitting on the floor, and Carl was like, "Are you all right, Ash? What's up?" And I was just like, "Carl, when does it stop hurting?" And he went, "Well," I went, like, literally, I'm still hurting from Friday, and it's Monday, and when does it stop? And he was like, "Oh, don't worry about that. Like, that'll be gone in a couple of months." And true to his word, it was. And then I remember Stephen Smith saying to me, "It's mad when you do, because obviously men do 12 rounds. Like, when you do a 12-round fight, you get to like round 6 and you think, oh my God, I'm knackered. And I've got 6 more to go." And then he said, you blink and it's 8, 9. And then you think, oh, well, actually, I've only got 3 left. So that's not too bad. Or you get to 10 and you think, right, there's only 2 left. I can see the end. So I think because I've I've been there in them moments, and I've been in the Kralov-Limachenko corners, and I've been in, it's Kralov and Ardes, and I've been with Smith Pedraza, and I've been with Liam and Callum and Groves. So I've been in them situations where it's not new, it's not alien, and I've been able to speak to the lads about it.
Yeah.
So I think that does help. That having that experience to be able, and now unfortunately for me, I'm that experienced one that people ask.
No, but you are so experienced now, and I'd like to find out about what you're like on fight day. Can you talk us through what fight day looks like for you, and has that actually changed with experience? So even in the locker room beforehand, like what would you be like in the locker room? Because I'm sure there's different fighters or different ways. Some of them probably very calm, others are probably getting a bit G'd up. What would your fight day dressing room routine look like?
So, do you know what? We did this like psychology thing of your perfect day on GB, and it was like, what do you do the day before? What do you do the night before? What do you do on the morning when you wake up? And literally it broke it down to, the hour before, 30 minutes before, 15 minutes before, the second you go in the ring, and we wrote that, and it was just your how would it be? So it was stupid things for me, like the night before I always shave my legs and my arms and under my arms. So and I pack my bag ready for the morning. I always make sure I've got my hydration and stuff. So obviously pro and amateur is a little bit different, because in the amateurs you weigh in every day, you box, so you can't always rehydrate the way that you do in pros. So things like that have changed, like the actual what I eat and stuff has changed, because obviously once I've weighed in as a pro, I don't have to make weight again. So that's changed, but my actual day and my day before and the process isn't really dissimilar. And I think it's because I did that I've kind of continued to use that, and I still do. And nothing ever goes perfect, but you try and keep it as close to that as you can. And that's what I still to this day use that.
Yeah, so you're talking about your perfect day there. It just kind of leads me into thinking about visualization is obviously an area of sports psychology that is quite well spoken about. Would you visualize in the lead up to a fight, even like how your changing room routine, your ring walk, and the actual fight in itself? Is that something, a road you've ever went down?
Yeah, all the time. And I think the one where I was most conscious of it was the last fight against Namas, because all the time in a fight week, like no matter how good your weight is, you're always worried about stepping on the scales and making weight officially. And well, I am anyway. I always do. I just want the weigh-in to be done. When the weigh-in's done, then you can feel like it's a bit of relief. But because I was so far under with Namas, I knew that weight wasn't going to be an issue. So I think I must have done about 3 million first rounds of boxing in my head before I actually got into the ring. And that I felt was a little bit more psychologically draining than worrying about the weight. So I was like, I'm not doing that again. Well, not that I'm not doing that again. I was thinking, I don't like this. I'd rather be worrying about the weight.
Yeah. There was actually, Tasha, just thinking about things that are psychologically draining. This is something that I read an interview with you in the past. Now, whether you might not want to speak about this, but I was trying to find it over the last couple of days when I knew I'd be speaking, and I couldn't find it. Some little weird things just stick in my head every now and then. I do remember reading this in the past, that you were talking about like a psychological issue that you had, or maybe you were seeing a psychologist over the fact that, I think were you pulling out your own hair?
Oh yeah, trichotillomania, yeah.
Really, yeah. So was that linked to sport? Was that linked to like pre-fight anxiety or anything, or is that something totally different?
So that actually started, I believe, when I went through my GCSEs, and it was just like a coping mechanism of, I just used to pull my hair out, and at one stage I'd pulled all the back up to about there, because I was so stressed, and it was just became like some people chew out, or some people cut themselves or whatever, and mine was just pulling my hair out, and I never even recognized it, or I didn't even think it was a thing. All my family whinge about it, and I've got 2 nieces that did it. One done it to my eyebrows, one done it to the hair. But I'd never recognised it as anything to do with that until I went on a program, and it was called the Sister Collective with the BBC, and it was talking about hair, and about like how you wear your hair, and someone said something, and I was like, oh yeah, my family are always going mad because I pull my hair out, and they were like, what do you mean you pull your hair out? So I went, well look, because even now you can see, like I get it and I pull it into the knot, and then I pull it out when it's in the knot, and they were like, you do what? And like afterwards, like a couple of people had messaged me and was like, you know what that's called? That's like a stress thing. And I was working with a sports psychologist at the time. He was like, you do know that's like a coping mechanism for stress. That's. And then when we've looked back at where it started, that's when it started, was in my GCSEs, because I'd literally always done it. But it does. I don't do it as much when I'm not competing, but it does. I do get, you'll see me in interviews in boxing, and I'll be sitting there like that, just doing it, because it's just what's like become a thing that I do. But it does get more prevalent, and you'll be able to visually see it more the closer the fight gets.
No, I remember
reading. You physically change, but that is a sign.
Yeah. And what your nieces currently have that same issue right now, do they? Yeah.
Two of them, yeah. One not so much. Not, she's kind of grew out of it. She was only little. She's like 9 now, but she had like one side of her hair that was that short and one side that was long, because she just did it as well. And then my other niece, was with the eyebrows, and then she actually, her mum was only made aware. Well, she knew anyway, because like half of her eyebrow was missing. But it got to the point where she was, because she had none of her own eyebrows to do, she was doing it to other kids, and that's when her mum got called in.
Is there any mechanisms you have now, coping mechanisms to deal with that, or is it just kind of the fact that you're aware of it, you can stop it?
Yeah, there is little things that we've thingy, so that's why now it is only in like high tense situation where I find myself doing it, but I do realise that I'm doing it now. Whereas literally, it was all, I used to sit there on the whole way to Sheffield, just doing that with one hand, driving with one hand, and resting my hand on the window, just doing it all the way up. I never knew that I did it.
Yeah. Look, I'm gonna only take another couple of minutes because I know you've been good with your time, but just talking about the end of your career now. Not that you're at the end of your career. I mean, you know how many fights you've got left, but like obviously you won a world title now. So in terms of your sporting goals, have your sporting goals been achieved, or is it a case of you want to unify a division, or what kind of drives you now that you actually won that world title?
I think the world title just brought a relief, if I'm honest. It was just a sense of, I always said I was good enough. I always think saying it is okay, but like it's hard to keep saying it and keep believing it when the results don't go your way, or you don't have anything to prove for it. So now that I've got that, I feel like I can go back to enjoying the boxing. And I'm not. I don't really. I've learned in the professional game that you can't. It's not like we're all going to build up to the Europeans or the World Championships, and then that's going to be our our points and our whatever for the rankings for the Olympics. It's not like that. And it's, unless you're boxing for the title, anything can change at any given moment, and you've got to manipulate and put yourself in strategically in positions to be able to go there. So we do have a plan. But as I say, plans can change. Would I like another belt? 100%. Would I like the rematch with Katie? 100%. Would I like a fight with McCaskill? 100%. Hannah Rankin, I think I haven't been quiet about saying to that. I'm open to suggestions and ideas. A few
options anyway.
There's a few options, but I think that's another thing that the title gives you is options. And I was pretty short on a few, and it was a lot of risk and no reward for a lot of people. So I don't, when it comes to the business side, it doesn't help me, but I understand why people were saying no.
Yeah. When you do hang up your gloves, you mentioned at the start of this podcast about how when you hurt your leg or you injured your knee in America, you kind of lost that sport and identity. Is that something that you maybe worry about for when you do retire? Do you worry about losing that Tasha the boxer identity?
I think having the Sky job will help. Because I'll always be involved in the big nights that I'm not fighting on. But I think now, I haven't gone through it before, I would just put myself back into like a coaching type of position. I went and did some amateur coaching back in the Rotunda when I'd finished, and I really enjoyed it. It's a different type of stress, and like, yeah, it was weird because you almost get attached, but in a different way, and you just want to see other people do well. So, and I think people respect you a lot because you've been and done it and been through it. So I definitely would like, boxing's been such a big part of my life. I don't think you could ever fully just walk away. So I would be involved in boxing in some sense. I'm even on parliamentary groups, for the discussions of the issues surrounding boxing and sport. And I never thought I'd be that type of person, if I'm honest. But I am. So I definitely would do that.
Would you like to coach professionally? I could be wrong here, but I personally don't remember seeing a female coach in a professional ring. Now maybe there's examples, I just haven't come across them. But I've seen as you're a bit of a trailblazer anyway. You might as well trailblaze in that department as well.
Yeah. I have applied for my manager's license. So maybe that sense, maybe coaching. I do. There's something about the amateurs. I think it's
just pure sport, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's the non-business side of it and don't get me wrong, there's politics in professional boxing and there is politics in amateur boxing, as we've seen with all the stuff that's going on. So I'm not saying that one's better than the other, but I just think as a sport, like the purity of it is a bit more. It's a bit more, less than.
If the coaching or the punditry didn't work out, you could always be an actor. I think you were in a movie before, weren't you, or an actress?
I started in like a little series where I was in a prison.
I remember that, Well, you had a line now. You had a couple of lines, didn't you? You were proper.
Yeah, I had a couple of speaking lines. Yeah, I wasn't very good, but I that was my first one. I got better.
That's cool. So, look, Tasha, I finish up with two questions for everyone anyway. So, the first question I'll ask you is, if you were to, I'll actually just steer this towards young females, seen as such a big week, particularly in England for young girls in sport. If you were to talk to a young girl getting involved in boxing at a high level, they might be in GB or they might be turning pro. What advice would you give them not necessarily in terms of physical or tactical or technical, just in terms of their mindset? What advice would you give a young female fighter starting off?
But I think the biggest thing that you can give anyone, and the biggest thing that you've got, is the belief in yourself. Because if you don't believe, making anyone buy into your dream is going to be so hard if you don't believe in yourself. So I've got like, you work hard, try your best, never give up. Like anything is possible if you do them things and believe in yourself, because it's not going to be easy. There is going to be tests and it's not straightforward, but if you do them things and you stick by them, anything's possible.
Good stuff. And the final question, and just to finish off, is what athlete do you admire most for their mindset? That can be any sport, it can be any era, any generation.
So my original person who I used to love, but I had to change it, was Marion Jones. I just loved the way that she transferred over sports, and she became, an elite runner as well as an elite basketball player. But then obviously the whole CJ Hunter and the doping came in, and I changed it to Tanni Gray-Thompson. And I think the reason for that is that sometimes in sport, it's not just about your sport. It's about the positive effect that you have on people who are like you. And now she's, a member of parliament, and she speaks up and makes acts on issues that affect people like her. And I think that's really important to do.
Yeah, good stuff. Brilliant way to finish. Thanks a million for coming on to the podcast, Tasha.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
Massive thanks to Natasha Jonas for coming on to the podcast this week. I followed Natasha's career ever since I first saw her compete in London 2012 against Katie Taylor, and to see her go through a couple of setbacks in the pro game and obviously then culminating in her winning a world title this year was amazing to see. And I'm delighted to finally have had the opportunity to get her to come onto the podcast.
just to talk about the journey that she's had and the mindset that's helped her to achieve so much in the game. So a massive thanks to Natasha for taking the time out to do that. And if you did enjoy this week's episode, you can subscribe to the channel on YouTube. You can subscribe to the channel on Spotify as well. And anytime there's a new episode coming out, you'll get a notification and it'll take you straight to the new episode. And you can also find us then on social media as well, on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, where you can also find 31 previous episodes that we've done as well. So yeah, you can find us on all those platforms and subscribe to the channel on both YouTube and Spotify. And also a big thanks to Jonathan Sweeney this week for editing the podcast as well. Hopefully I'll see you here for the next episode.